The massive Zentari warships hung in space like dark metal moons, their hulls gleaming with the blue glow of energy shields that had never failed in 300 years of conquest. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the alien fleet approach through the viewscreen. His hands gripped the command chair as he counted the enemy vessels. 50 ships, each one 3 times the size of his own cruiser. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zentari flagship," reported Communications Officer Danny Walsh. His voice carried the tension that filled the entire bridge. Every crew member knew what was coming next. Jake nodded. "Put it on." Screen. The view screen flickered, showing the imposing figure of Admiral Keshtar, the Zentari commander. His reptilian features were marked with the ritual scars of a career warrior, and his yellow eyes held the cold confidence of someone who had never known defeat. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Human vessels, you have entered Zentari space without permission. Your primitive technology poses no threat to our shields. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make examples of your worlds." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people, men and women who had signed up to defend humanity's colonies on the Outer Rim. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless fight against an enemy that had crushed every species it encountered. But Jake had received his orders directly from Admiral Lisa Carter herself. The orders were simple and clear. Hold the line at any cost. Earth's colonies depended on it. Millions of human lives hung in the balance. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Corinne Foster from the weapons station, "Admiral Carter is hailing us on the command frequency." Jake straightened his uniform and activated the secure channel. Admiral Carter's face appeared on his personal screen, her expression grim but determined. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of the flagship Washington, buzzing with activity. As the human fleet prepared for battle, "Captain Morrison, you know why we're here," Admiral Carter said. "The Zentari have pushed too far into human territory. If we don't stop them now, they'll roll right over our colonies and head straight for Earth." Jake nodded. "Understood, Admiral, but their shields have never been penetrated. Every species that tried to fight them with energy weapons failed. Our plasma cannons and particle beams won't even scratch their hulls." A strange smile crossed Admiral Carter's face. "That's exactly why we're going to win, Captain. Every species they've conquered made the same mistake. They all tried to fight the Zentari with the same advanced weapons. But we humans, we've kept some of the old ways alive." "I don't understand, Admiral." "Captain, what's the primary armament?" "On your ship?" Jake blinked in confusion. "The 20mm railgun system, ma'am. But those are just for point defense against missiles and fighters. They fire simple metal slugs." "Exactly. And what about your Marines? What do they carry?" "Standard kinetic rifles, Admiral. They fire lead bullets at high velocity. But I still don't see how that helps us against energy shields." Admiral Carter's smile widened. "Captain, the Zentari shields are designed to stop energy weapons. Plasma bolts, particle beams, laser cannons, all the advanced weapons that every other species uses. But they've never encountered simple kinetic energy. Mass times velocity equals force, and sometimes the simplest physics is the most effective." Jake felt his pulse quicken as he began to understand. "You're saying their shields can't stop bullets?" "I'm saying we're about to find out. All ships in the fleet are loaded with conventional rounds. Every railgun, every marine rifle, every single kinetic weapon we have. The Zentari think we're primitive because we still use projectile weapons. Today we show them why humanity never abandoned the basics." The communication channel crackled with static as Admiral Carter addressed the entire human fleet. "All ships. This is Admiral Carter. Today we face an enemy that has conquered half the galaxy. They believe their technology makes them invincible. They believe their shields cannot be broken. They are wrong." Jake could hear the Admiral's voice echoing through the corridors of his ship as she continued. "For 3 centuries, The Zentari have defeated every species they encountered because those species tried to fight them with advanced energy weapons. But we humans have something they've never faced before. We have the wisdom to know that sometimes the old ways work best. The Zentari fleet began to move forward, their ships spreading out into attack formation. Jake could see the energy shields flickering around each vessel, creating a blue halo that had protected them in thousands of battles. No weapon in the galaxy had ever penetrated those shields. "All ships, prepare for battle," Admiral Carter commanded. "Load conventional rounds. Today, we teach the galaxy that there's nothing obsolete about a good old-fashioned bullet." Jake turned to his weapons officer. "You heard the Admiral. Load the railguns with solid slugs, maximum velocity." Lieutenant Foster's hands moved across her console with practiced efficiency. "Railguns loaded and ready, Captain." "All systems show green." The Zentari ships opened fire first, sending streams of plasma bolts toward the human fleet. The energy weapons lit up space like deadly fireworks, but the human ship's armor held. The Zentari had grown overconfident, assuming their shields made them untouchable. Their own defenses were weaker than they should have been. "Return fire," Jake ordered. The first human railgun slug hit the Zentari flagship like a hammer striking glass. Admiral Keshtar watched in stunned silence as his ship's energy shields flickered and died, the blue glow that had protected his vessel for decades simply vanishing. The metal projectile punched through the shield matrix as if it wasn't there, tearing a hole in the hull that sent atmosphere streaming into space. "What happened to our shields?" Keshtar roared at his tactical officer, a young Zentari named Vexmal, who had never seen their defenses fail. "I don't know, Admiral." The energy readings show the shields were operating at full power when the projectile struck, but it passed right through them without any resistance. Keshtar stared at the tactical display, watching as more human ships opened fire. Each shot was a simple metal slug, nothing more than refined or launched at high velocity. But every single projectile penetrated their shields and struck home. His proud fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being torn apart by what appeared to be primitive ammunition. Captain Ben Phillips commanded the human destroyer Ranger, one of the smaller ships in Admiral Carter's fleet. His vessel carried only 4 railgun turrets, but each one was loaded with depleted uranium penetrators that could punch through solid steel. He watched his tactical display as his first shot struck a Zentari cruiser, sending debris spinning away from the impact point. "Direct hit on target 3, reported his gunner, Sergeant Mike Johnson. "Their shields didn't even slow it down." Ben couldn't believe what he was seeing. For months, intelligence reports had described the Zentari energy shields as impenetrable. Every species that had fought them had failed to break through their defenses. Yet here was his small destroyer, armed with nothing more advanced than a magnetic accelerator, putting holes in their ships like they were made of paper. "Fire again," Ben ordered. "Target their weapon systems." The second shot struck the Zentari cruiser's main plasma cannon, causing a massive explosion that lit up the darkness of space. The alien ship began to list to one side, its engines sputtering, as internal systems failed. Ben had just crippled a vessel twice the size of his own with 2 simple metal slugs. "Commander." Nina Brooks watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the command ship Washington. As Admiral Carter's chief intelligence officer, she had spent years studying Zentari technology, trying to find some weakness in their seemingly perfect defenses. She had run countless simulations, analyzed every battle report, and consulted with the galaxy's best scientists. None of them had thought to test simple kinetic weapons against energy shields. "Admiral," Nina called out, "we're receiving surrender requests from 6 Zentari vessels. They're asking for terms." Admiral Carter shook her head. "Not yet. We need to make sure they understand this wasn't luck. Continue firing until they retreat or their entire fleet surrenders." Across the battlefield, human ships were systematically destroying Zentari vessels with weapons that should have been obsolete. The destroyer Phoenix, commanded by Captain Roy Baker, used its point defense guns to shred a Zentari fighter squadron. The fighters' personal shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against streams of 20mm bullets. Lieutenant Amy Chun piloted one of the human fighter craft, her ship armed with conventional machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. She dove toward a Zentari bomber, her targeting computer tracking the large alien vessel. The bomber's pilot tried to evade, but the massive ship was too slow to escape. Amy's machine guns chattered as she opened fire, sending hundreds of bullets into the bomber's hull. The Zentari shields flickered weakly around the impact points but failed to stop the projectiles. Within seconds, the bomber was trailing fire and debris, its crew desperately trying to reach the escape pods. "This is incredible," Amy radioed to her squadron leader. "Their shields can't stop anything we throw at them. It's like they were designed to fight a completely different war." Back on the Zentari flagship, Admiral Keshtar was trying to understand how his perfect military had been defeated by what he considered Stone Age weapons. His science officer, Dr. Yuthara, pulled up the shield analysis on her console, her scaled hands trembling as she read the data. "Admiral, our shields are designed to absorb and deflect energy-based attacks. They create a barrier that can stop plasma bolts, particle beams, and laser weapons. But these human projectiles are purely kinetic. They're just masses of metal moving at high speed." "Why can't the shields stop them?" Keshtar demanded. "Because the shields don't register them as weapons, Admiral. The energy signature is too low. Our defensive systems see them as space debris or meteorites. The shields are programmed to let small objects pass through to avoid wasting power on cosmic dust." Keshtar felt his blood run cold. The Zentari Empire had spent centuries perfecting their defenses against the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. They had created shields that could stop Star Destroyer-class plasma cannons and deflect planet-cracking particle beams. But they had never considered that an enemy might use simple bullets. "Can we modify the shields?" he asked desperately. Dr. Yuthara shook her head. "Not during battle, Admiral. And the modifications would require completely rebuilding the shield generators. It would take months of work in a shipyard." Another human projectile struck the flagship, this one hitting the main reactor shielding. Emergency klaxons began wailing throughout the ship as radiation levels spiked in the engine compartments. Keshtar realized that his mighty fleet was being destroyed by enemies using weapons that belonged in a museum. "All ships, retreat to the outer system," he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "We need time to regroup and analyze this new threat." As the Zentari fleet limped away from the battle, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Washington, watching her tactical display. Her small fleet of human ships had just defeated the most feared military force in the galaxy using nothing more than metal slugs and good old-fashioned physics. "Admiral," Commander Brooks reported, "we're receiving communications from 17 different species. They want to know how we broke the Zentari shields." Admiral Carter smiled grimly. "Tell them we'll be happy to share the information. It's time the galaxy learned that sometimes the simplest weapons are the most effective." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 100 worlds, enslaved species huddled around hidden communication devices, listening to reports that seemed impossible. The mighty Zentari Empire, which had ruled with absolute power for 3 centuries, had been defeated by a species using primitive weapons that fired simple metal bullets. Colonel Steve Martinez stepped off the transport ship onto the surface of Kepler 442b, a world that had been under Zentari control for 40 years. The planet's native species, the Altarians, were a peaceful race of blue-skinned humanoids who had never developed advanced weapons. Their pacifist culture had made them easy targets for Zentari conquest, and they had suffered under alien rule. Ever since, the Altarian leader, Elder Zephyrin, met Martinez at the landing pad. His large silver eyes held a mixture of hope and fear as he looked at the human colonel. The Altarians had heard about the human victory, but they found it hard to believe that anyone could defeat the Zentari shields. "Colonel Martinez, Elder," Zephyrin said in his melodic voice, "we have heard strange reports from across the galaxy. They say your people have found a way to break through Zentari defenses. Is this true?" Martinez nodded, adjusting the rifle slung across his shoulder. It's true, Elder. We've discovered that their energy shields can't stop kinetic weapons. Simple. Bullets pass right through them. The Elder's eyes widened. Bullets? But those are ancient weapons. We abandoned such crude technology centuries ago when we learned to harness plasma energy. That's exactly why they work, Martinez explained. The Zentari designed their shields to stop advanced energy weapons. They never considered that someone might still use old-fashioned projectiles. Martinez had volunteered to lead a team of human military advisors to worlds under Zentari occupation. His mission was simple: teach the native species how to fight back using kinetic weapons. The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity's supposed technological backwardness had become their greatest strength. Over the following weeks, Martinez and his team worked with the Altarian resistance. They showed the aliens how to manufacture simple bullets using local materials, how to build basic firearms, and how to use guerrilla tactics against their oppressors. The Altarians were quick learners, and their natural intelligence made up for their lack of military experience. The key is to hit them where they don't expect it, Martinez explained to a group of Altarian fighters. Their shields make them overconfident. They think they're invincible, so they don't take proper precautions. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Commander Amy Turner was working with a different species. The vegans were reptilian creatures who had been enslaved by the Zentari for over a century. Unlike the peaceful Altarians, the vegans had a warrior culture, but their traditional weapons were no match for Zentari technology. Amy stood in a hidden cave system that served as the vegan resistance headquarters. Around her, dozens of alien warriors practiced with human-designed weapons. The rifles looked crude compared to the sleek energy weapons the Zentari used, but they were deadly effective. Remember, Amy told her students, you don't need to destroy their entire ship. Just put a few bullets through their hull and they'll lose atmosphere. Their shields can't stop air from escaping through bullet holes. The vegan leader, War Chief Slixton, hefted one of the human rifles with his clawed hands. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he examined the weapon. These projectile weapons are simple but effective. My warriors can learn to use them quickly, Amy smiled. That's the beauty of kinetic weapons. They're easy to manufacture, easy to maintain, and easy to use. You don't need advanced technology to make them work. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. Human advisors worked with local resistance groups, teaching them to use weapons that their oppressors had dismissed as obsolete. The Zentari Empire, which had maintained control through technological superiority, suddenly found itself facing enemies who fought with weapons they couldn't defend against. On the mining world of Titan VII, Captain Jack Foster led a joint human-alien force in their first major operation against the Zentari garrison. The plan was simple: use kinetic weapons to neutralize the alien shields, then capture their advanced technology intact. Jack crouched behind a rocky outcrop, watching the Zentari compound through his binoculars. The alien base was protected by energy barriers and automated defense systems, but all of their defenses were designed to stop plasma weapons and particle beams. Team 1, move into position, Jack whispered into his radio. Remember, single shots only. We want to disable their equipment, not destroy it. The attack began at dawn. Human soldiers and alien resistance fighters opened fire simultaneously, their bullets punching through the Zentari shields as if they weren't there. The alien guards, caught completely off guard, tried to return fire with their plasma weapons, but the attackers were already moving to new positions. Within minutes, the compound was secured. The Zentari garrison, faced with weapons they couldn't defend against, surrendered rather than face certain death. For the first time in decades, the mining world was free. News of the victory reached the Zentari High Council on their homeworld. The alien leaders, who had grown comfortable with their position as the galaxy's dominant power, were beginning to realize that their empire was under serious threat. How many worlds have we lost contact with? Asked Supreme Commander Thexver. His scarred face twisted with anger. 17 systems have gone silent in the past month, reported Intelligence Chief Cathala. We believe they've all fallen to human-led resistance movements. Dexter slammed his fist on the council table. Impossible. These primitives with their crude weapons cannot threaten our empire. With respect, Supreme Commander, Cathala replied. Carefully, their weapons may be crude, but they're effective. Our shields cannot stop them, and our armies are not prepared for this type of warfare. The truth was becoming clear to the Zentari leadership. Their 300-year reign of terror was coming to an end, brought down by species using weapons they had considered museum pieces. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and that technological advancement meant nothing if it came at the cost of practical thinking. The revolution began at exactly the same moment across 17 different star systems. On worlds separated by thousands of light years, alien resistance fighters raised their weapons and fired the first shots of what would become known as the Kinetic War. The Zentari Empire, which had ruled through fear and superior technology for 3 centuries, found itself under attack from enemies using weapons they had dismissed as primitive toys. Captain Ron Davis commanded the Joint Task Force that struck the Vega system first. His fleet consisted of 12 human ships and twice as many vessels crewed by alien rebels who had learned to use kinetic weapons. The Zentari defense grid around Vega Prime was formidable, with orbital platforms armed with plasma cannons and particle beam arrays that could destroy entire fleets. All ships, remember the plan, Davis radioed to his mixed fleet. Their weapons can hurt us, but their shields can't stop us. Fast strikes, hit and run tactics, and keep moving. The human ship Defiance led the charge, its hull bristling with railgun turrets and missile launchers. Behind it came the Altarian vessel Hope's Light, a converted merchant ship that had been armed with simple kinetic weapons. The ship looked crude compared to the sleek Zentari platforms, but its crew knew that appearance didn't matter in this new kind of warfare. Lieutenant Karen White piloted a supply ship through the asteroid field at the edge of the system. Her cargo hold filled with ammunition and weapons for the resistance cells on the planet below. The Zentari had never bothered to guard against simple metal bullets and gunpowder, considering them too primitive to be worth smuggling. Now those same materials were becoming the tools of rebellion. Supply run Alpha is go, Karen reported over her encrypted radio, delivering packages to the surface teams. On the planet below, Altarian fighters waited in hidden bunkers, their blue skin darkened with camouflage paint. They had been slaves for 40 years, but the human advisors had taught them that freedom was worth fighting for. Elder Zephyrin, who had once been a pacifist leader, now carried a rifle and led his people in their first real battle against their oppressors. Today we take back our world, Zephyrin told his fighters as they prepared for the assault. The Zentari think their shields make them gods, but we have learned the truth. Even gods can bleed when you shoot them with the right weapon. The attack on the Zentari garrison began with a single shot from a human-made sniper rifle. The bullet traveled 2 kilometers through the morning air and struck a Zentari officer in the chest, passing through his personal shield as if it didn't exist. The officer fell, and the revolution began in earnest. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, War Chief Slixton led his vegan warriors in a coordinated assault on the Zentari mining operations. The reptilian aliens had been forced to work in the dangerous mines for over a century, but now they carried weapons that could punch through any defense their oppressors possessed. "For our children who died in the mines," Slixton roared as he fired his rifle at a Zentari hover tank. The bullets tore through the vehicle's shield matrix and punched holes in its armor plating. "For our people who suffered under alien rule." The Zentari forces, caught completely off guard by the sudden uprising, tried to respond with their usual overwhelming firepower. But their energy weapons, designed to fight other advanced civilizations, were less effective against enemies who used guerrilla tactics and simple cover. The rebels hid behind rocks and trees, places where energy shields couldn't protect the Zentari from kinetic weapons fired from multiple directions. Captain Davis watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Defiance, his tactical display showing Zentari ships exploding all across the system. The alien defenders had expected to face plasma cannons and particle beams, weapons they could defend against. Instead, they were being destroyed by railgun slugs and rocket-propelled grenades. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zentari commander," reported Communications Officer Tony Rodriguez. "He's asking for terms?" Davis shook his head. "Not yet. We need to make sure they understand this isn't an isolated incident. Connect me with the other task forces." Across the galaxy, similar battles were raging. Human-led fleets struck at Zentari strongholds while local resistance movements rose up on occupied worlds. The Empire's communication networks were filled with desperate pleas for help from commanders who couldn't understand how their perfect defenses had failed on the industrial world of Gamma Station. Engineer Lucy Adams worked frantically to convert captured Zentari equipment for use by the Resistance. The alien technology was sophisticated, but it was also inflexible. Every system was designed to work with energy weapons, and the Zentari had never considered that someone might want to mount a simple machine gun on their vehicles. "The problem is their entire military doctrine," Lucy explained to her team of human and alien engineers. "They've spent centuries perfecting energy-based warfare, but they never learned how to fight a kinetic war. The converted Zentari vehicles look strange with their mix of alien technology and human weapons, but they were devastatingly effective. A hover tank that had once been invincible became vulnerable when its shields couldn't stop bullets from penetrating its armor. A fighter craft that could deflect plasma bolts was helpless against streams of 20mm cannon fire." The Zentari High Council convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across the Empire. Supreme Commander Thexver stared at the tactical display, watching as red icons marked the loss of system after system. His perfect military machine was being dismantled by enemies using weapons that belonged in a museum. "How many systems have we lost?" he asked his intelligence chief. 43 systems are under attack," Cathala reported. 21 have fallen completely. The humans have shared their kinetic weapon technology with every species in the galaxy. "Deploy the reserve fleets," Thexver ordered. "We'll crush this rebellion before it spreads further." But even as he gave the order, Thexver knew that the Empire was facing something it had never encountered before. For 3 centuries, the Zentari had defeated every enemy by relying on their superior technology. Now they were fighting enemies who had turned their technological superiority into a weakness. The revolution was spreading faster than the Zentari could respond. On world after world, oppressed species were learning that freedom was possible if they were willing to fight for it with the right weapons. The galaxy was discovering that sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and that a simple bullet could be more powerful than the most advanced energy weapon ever created. The Zentari Empire was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible. Within 6 months of the first human victory, over half of their conquered worlds had fallen to the rebellion. The Empire's energy-based economy, built around plasma refineries and particle accelerator factories, couldn't adapt quickly enough to produce kinetic defenses. Meanwhile, humans and their allies could manufacture effective weapons in any basic machine shop using simple materials. General Pete Johnson stood on the command deck of the massive human dreadnought Liberty Bell, watching the blue-green world of Zentari Prime grow larger on the view screen. This was the heart of the Empire, the homeworld where the alien rulers had planned their conquest of the galaxy. Now it was under siege by a fleet that included ships from dozens of liberated species, all armed with weapons the Zentari had once considered obsolete. "General, we're receiving the final surrender from the orbital defense platforms," reported Captain Sarah Kim from the communications station. "Platform 7 was the last holdout, but they've just powered down their weapons." Johnson nodded grimly. The siege of Zentari Prime had taken 3 weeks, but the outcome had never been in doubt. The planet's defenses, designed to stop energy weapons, had been systematically destroyed by kinetic bombardment. Simple artillery shells and railgun slugs had torn through shields that had protected the homeworld for centuries. "Begin landing operations," Johnson ordered. "But remember, we're not here for revenge. We're here to end this war and build something better." Engineer Tracy Adams worked in the converted hangar bay of the Liberty Bell, supervising the modification of captured Centauri fighters. Her team had learned to strip out the aliens' energy weapons and replace them with human-designed mass drivers and machine guns. The hybrid vessels were becoming symbols of the new galaxy, combining alien technology with human practicality. The trick is to keep their life support and navigation systems, Tracy explained to her mixed crew of human and alien technicians, but everything else gets replaced with kinetic weapons. Their shield generators are useless now, so we rip those out and use the space for ammunition storage. One of her assistants, a young Altarian named Veltar, held up a Centauri plasma cannon. "What do we do with these energy weapons?" Tracy smiled. "We'll find a use for them eventually. Maybe as industrial tools or power sources. Just because they're useless in combat doesn't mean they're worthless." On the surface of Centauri Prime, the capital city of Kethmore was experiencing something it had never known in its 3,000-year history: foreign occupation. But unlike the brutal conquests the Centauri had inflicted on other worlds, the human-led coalition was trying to be fair and just. Liberation forces moved through the streets, maintaining order while allowing the civilian population to continue their daily lives. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Turner commanded the ground forces securing the government district. His troops, a mix of human marines and alien freedom fighters, had taken control of the massive pyramid that served as the Centauri High Council chambers. The building's energy shields had been useless against rocket-propelled grenades and armor-piercing bullets. "Sir, we've secured the council chambers," reported Sergeant Bill Foster over the radio. "Most of the government officials are cooperating, but Supreme Commander Thexfer is demanding to speak with whoever's in charge." Mark made his way through the ornate corridors of the pyramid, past walls decorated with murals depicting Centauri conquests. The art showed their fleets destroying other civilizations, their soldiers marching through captured cities. Now those same halls echoed with the footsteps of the people they had once oppressed. Supreme Commander Thexver sat in what had once been his throne room, surrounded by human guards. The proud Centauri leader looked older than his years, his scarred face showing the weight of defeat. When Mark entered the room, Thexver's yellow eyes burned with a mixture of anger and confusion. "You," Thexver said, pointing a clawed finger at Mark. "Your people have destroyed everything we built. 3 centuries of order and progress, gone because of your primitive weapons." Mark pulled up a chair and sat down across from the former. "Ruler, your order was built on oppression. Your progress came at the cost of other species' freedom. Maybe it was time for a change? But how?" Thexver demanded. "Our shields were perfect. Our technology was superior. How did you defeat us with such crude weapons?" "That's exactly why we won," Mark explained patiently. "You became so focused on advanced technology that you forgot the basics. You built shields that could stop Star Destroyer weapons, but you never considered that someone might use a simple bullet." Thexver was silent for a long moment, processing this information. "Our scientists said the same thing after your first victory. We became too specialized, too dependent on energy-based warfare." "It happens to every empire eventually," Mark said. "They get comfortable with their advantages and stop thinking about new threats. The Romans never expected barbarians with simple weapons to bring down their civilization either." Meanwhile, in orbit around Centauri Prime, Admiral Lisa Carter coordinated the establishment of a new galactic government. Representatives from dozens of liberated worlds had gathered aboard the flagship Washington to discuss the future. The meeting was chaotic, with species that had been enemies for centuries trying to work together, but it was also hopeful. "The old empire is dead," Admiral Carter announced to the assembled delegates. "Now we have to decide what comes next. We can't just replace Centauri tyranny with human tyranny." Elder Zephlin of the Altarians stood to address the assembly. "The humans have shown us that diversity of thinking is strength. Perhaps our new government should reflect that principle." War. Chief Slixton of the Vegans nodded in agreement. "My people have learned much from working with human advisors. We should share knowledge and technology freely, not hoard it for military advantage. Dr. Helen Ross, the head of the Human Technology Exchange Program, stepped forward with a proposal. We should establish research centers on every world, places where different species can work together to solve problems. No one should ever again become so dependent on a single type of technology that they forget the alternatives. The debates continued for days, but gradually a new structure began to emerge. The Galaxy Alliance would be a confederation of free worlds with no single species holding dominance. Technology would be shared openly, and military forces would be designed with multiple types of weapons to prevent any one defensive system from becoming too powerful. As the talks progressed, even former Zentari officials began to participate. Many of them, freed from the rigid hierarchy of the Empire, admitted that they had always known their system was flawed but had been afraid to speak up. "We forgot that the purpose of technology is to serve people, not to control them," said former Intelligence Chief Kathala during one session. "Perhaps working with other species will help us remember that lesson." The siege of Zentari Prime marked the end of the old galaxy and the beginning of something new. For the first time in centuries, the stars belonged to all the species that lived among them, protected not by invincible shields but by the understanding that cooperation and diversity were stronger than any single technological advantage. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Zentari Empire, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before the war. Admiral Paul Garcia stood on the bridge of the renamed flagship Unity, watching as the last group of Zentari holdouts approached under a flag of surrender. The ship itself was a symbol of the new era, its hull bristling with both kinetic weapons and energy systems that represented the marriage of human practicality and alien innovation. "Admiral, the Zentari remnant fleet is requesting permission." "To dock," reported Communications Officer Jenny Walsh. "They say they're ready to accept the terms of the Galactic Accords." Garcia nodded. "Grant them permission. It's time to put the past behind us and focus on building the future." The Unity was more than just a warship now. It served as a mobile headquarters for the Galaxy Alliance, traveling between star systems to help establish the new order. Its cargo bays were filled with construction equipment and medical supplies rather than weapons, and its crew included representatives from dozens of different species working together toward common goals. Dr. Helen Ross made her way through the ship's corridors toward the main conference room where the final surrender ceremony would take place. As head of the Technology Integration Committee, she had spent the last 5 years working to ensure that the galaxy's various species would never again become over-dependent on any single type of technology. "The key is redundancy," Helen often told her students at the new Galactic Technical Institute. "Every defense should have a backup, and every backup should work on different principles. Energy shields are useful, but they should be paired with physical armor. Plasma weapons are effective, but you should also carry kinetic alternatives." The philosophy had become central to the new galactic civilization. Research stations throughout the galaxy worked on projects that combined different technological approaches, creating hybrid systems that were more resilient than anything the Zentari had ever built. The old Empire's single-minded focus on energy weapons was seen as a cautionary tale about the dangers of technological tunnel vision. In the conference room, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness the final end of the old regime. Elder Zephelin of the Altarians sat next to War Chief Slixton of the Vegans, former enemies who had become close allies during the Revolution. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Alliance, represented humanity's interests while maintaining the humble approach that had won them so many friends. The Zentari delegation was led by Admiral Keshtar, the same officer who had once threatened to destroy human colonies. But the years had changed him, and his experience working with the Alliance during the reconstruction efforts had taught him valuable lessons about cooperation and mutual respect. "I want to apologize," Keshtar said as he addressed the assembly. "My people spent centuries believing that our technological superiority gave us the right to rule others. We forgot that true strength comes from working together, not from dominating those who are different. Captain Morrison stood to respond. Admiral, the past can't be changed, but the future is what we make of it. Your people have already proven their commitment to the new order by helping to rebuild the worlds that were damaged during the war. It was true. Former Zentari engineers had worked alongside human technicians and alien scientists to repair the infrastructure that had been destroyed during the conflict. Their advanced manufacturing techniques, combined with human ingenuity and alien creativity, had made the rebuilding process faster and more effective than anyone had expected. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker, who had once trained resistance fighters to use kinetic weapons against Centauri shields, now oversaw joint military exercises where former enemies practiced working together. The new Alliance Defense Force was deliberately designed to include troops from every member species, ensuring that no single group could dominate the others. The most important lesson we've learned, Amy told her mixed group of human and alien officers, is that diversity makes us stronger when we all think the same way. We all have the same blind spots. But when we combine different perspectives and different approaches, we can solve problems that would be impossible for any one species to handle alone. The Unity's engineering chief, Tony Martinez, had spent years studying Zentari technology and teaching alien engineers how to work with human systems. His workshops had become models for the kind of cooperation that defined the new galaxy, with species sharing their knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for military advantage. The Zentari plasma systems are actually quite efficient when you pair them with kinetic backup weapons, Tony explained to a group of young engineers from various species. And human railgun technology works even better when you power it with Altarian energy cells. The key is understanding that different doesn't mean inferior. As the ceremony concluded and the final Zentari holdouts officially joined the Galaxy Alliance, Admiral Garcia reflected on how much had changed since that first battle at Earth's outer colonies. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as supposed primitives using obsolete weapons. But they had proven that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. The stars now belong to all the galaxy's children, protected not by invincible shields or unstoppable weapons, but by the understanding that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The various species had learned to combine their different strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses, creating a civilization that was more resilient and more just than anything that had come before. Dr. Ross stood at one of the Unity's observation windows, watching as ships from dozens of different worlds worked together to establish a new space station that would serve as a symbol of galactic unity. The station's design incorporated architectural elements from every member species, and its defenses included both energy shields and physical armor, kinetic weapons, and plasma cannons. "It's beautiful," said Elder Zephelin as he joined her at the window. "A galaxy where differences are celebrated instead of feared," Helen smiled. "And where no one ever again forgets that sometimes the old ways work best, and that a simple bullet can indeed shatter more than just shields." The galaxy had learned its lesson about the dangers of technological arrogance, and the new order was built on principles of humility, cooperation, and respect for all forms of knowledge. The Age of Empires was over, replaced by an era of alliance and mutual support that promised to last for generations to come.